Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm Lance Corey, X Games gold medalist.
I'm Juan Arceo, aerospace engineer. Some of you guys may have seen us from the Thrashin Supply blog.
And you know what? Today, we are gonna tell you guys the big differences that we've noticed between Juan's 2022 Road Glide and my 2022 Low Rider ST. So before we get into the differences that Juan and I have experienced, I want to get into the details and the specifics of these bikes themselves. The 2022 Road Glide comes in at $21,430. Now the 2022 Low Rider ST comes in at $21,749. These bikes are close in length, but the Road Glide comes in at 95.7 inches, where the ST comes in at 93.1 inches long. The Road Glide comes in with a seat height of 25.9 inches, where the Low Rider ST comes in at 27 inches. Now the ground clearance on these bikes, the Road Glide has 5.5 inches of ground clearance, where the Low Rider ST has 5.9 inches of ground clearance. Wheelbase on the Road Glide is 64 inches, where the wheelbase on the ST is 63.6. The fuel capacity on the Road Glide is 6 gallons, where the fuel capacity on the Low Rider ST is 5 gallons, and that really makes a difference when you are on a road trip. The Road Glide comes in at 855 pounds, where the Low Rider ST comes in at 721 pounds. The luggage capacity on the Road Glide, you're at 2.3 cubic feet, and on the Low Rider ST, you're at 1.9 cubic feet. Being that the Road Glide is heavier and a bigger bike, it actually comes with less displacement. This engine is a 107 cubic inch. The Low Rider ST actually comes in at 117 cubic inches. Now the Road Glide, it also has less torque. This bike comes in at 111 foot-pounds of torque, whereas the Low Rider ST comes in with 125 foot-pounds of torque. The Road Glide comes in with 31 degrees of lean angle, where the Low Rider ST comes in at 31.3 degrees of lean angle. The Road Glide comes in at 43 mpg, and on the Low Rider ST at 47 mpg. 2022 came, and Juan and I have been doing a lot of riding. He rode his Dyna to Sturgis, and I've been telling him, dude, you need to get a bagger for these longer rides we're doing. We're starting to hit the road for 400 or 500 miles a day. It makes it that much more enjoyable. Juan had the choice. He was at the dealership. The crazy thing is these two bikes, they're both sub $22,000 MSRP. And Juan kind of was in that budget, and he had the opportunity to buy a Low Rider ST if he wanted to, or a base model Road Glide. Juan, what made you decide, I want the base model Road Glide?
I was in the market for a new bike, and because I rode Sturgis, I was lucky enough to ride this bike a couple of months before I even knew I wanted a new bike. And then I rode the CVO.
Wait a second, refresh my memory. Did I already own this?
Yeah, we picked this bike up. Remember, we picked it up, I rode it home, and then I did a couple other rides, and I really enjoyed it. But then what really got me going was when I took the CVO home for a weekend. Okay. Got to ride it with my brother and his buddies. They all had just gotten Road Glides, and I was like, damn, the Road Glide's where it's at. That was like my turning point. Put some miles on both bikes, but taking the CVO home, hitting the canyons, doing some regular street riding, and I was like, I want one of these bikes.
At the time when you're testing both of my bikes, both of them are 117s, so both of them have the same power plant. Both of them are already kind of outfitted with nice bars, risers, controls. So you're getting on bikes that have good suspension, they're comfortable, both powerful. What pushed you over the edge to go for that bike?
Again, I fell in love with the CVO, the fairing, the wind protection. I was coming from a Dyna, a smaller bike. The 117 was fast for what it needed to be. So Harley fast, right? Obviously they're sport bikes. I was like, okay, if I get a 107, still gonna keep up. Just having fun. They both cruise 90, no problem. I know the ST looked really good and it had a lot of hype when it came out. It was like a hype bike. Road Glide fairing, big wind protection. It was comfortable. I knew we were gonna do a lot of modifications to it. One thing very surprising when I rode the CVO. I know it's not physically light, but it handled just as good as a small bike.
So I was talking about the weight. If I look at my cheat sheets right here, the Low Rider ST is almost 120 pounds, did I say? So the running weight of the Low Rider ST is 721 pounds. What's the running weight of your bike?
So running weight is 855 on the bagger, but I feel like that number is a little misleading because once you change up your setup, and I'm not trying to make this into like an infomercial, but when we did like bars and risers on the CVO, it made it feel like, damn, okay, it's heavy, but when you're riding it, it felt comfortable and you could like maneuver it better.
Well, in your defense with what you're saying, both of the bikes feel the exact same weight when you're rolling down the road.
Exactly.
When you're going down the road and you're riding it or you're in the canyons, ultimately they do feel the same weight. Where I notice the 120 or 130 pound difference on the ST is when I'm riding it aggressive in terms of the wheelies, the burnouts. I also kind of notice it if I make a subtle mistake at low speeds in like a parking lot.
Yeah.
Right? Like you got to dab your foot, and that extra 100 pounds that you don't have on the bike, sometimes the bagger wants to just like keep going.
Yeah.
You know, we've all been there. I'm a very experienced rider, so is Juan, and there are moments where you're looking one direction and you didn't realize there was a little pothole or something, and you dab your foot so you don't hit the ground. When you're on the ST, it makes that a little bit more comfortable and a little bit easier to kind of stand the bike up. I would say for somebody who isn't as comfortable at those low speeds, this is an easier bike to maybe get used to. We just came home from our Arizona trip, and one thing that I noticed that was a little bit of a drawback is that this bike only has a 5-gallon gas tank and that bike has a 6-gallon gas tank. Now I know that on the actual cheat sheet right here on Harley's website, it claims that this bike gets a little bit better gas mileage than your bike.
But that's also depends on how you're riding it.
Totally.
You could baby this 107 and you can get pretty good gas mileage. You could romp on that and get bad gas mileage, and vice versa.
Yeah, so those numbers are yeah, it's a little different, but in real world situations, I don't think that those MPGs are realistic.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I was filling up that gallon earlier than you. And so it does set our gas fill ups off. And honestly, I do like when I'm on a long road trip to be able to fill up less, because every time you stop, it just wastes time. And once you get on the road and once you break over that 100, 150 mile, like the next 50 is easy.
Yeah.
Like it's just easy to kind of keep going. So that was one bummer that I did notice when we were on our road trip, was like, dang, I just wish I could go that extra 50 miles and not have to pull over right now and stress out about gas as much.
So on that note, that was another reason why I kind of chose my bagger, because I was still keeping my Dyna, which a Dyna has a smaller tank, right? I felt like I didn't need a bike that would do the things a small bike would, like a Dyna or an FXR. This could be my touring bike, and it's really good at touring. It's a touring chassis, and maybe somebody that doesn't have the option of having both bikes might want the ST because it's an in-between.
I honestly totally fallen in love with the Low Rider ST, and you're talking about chassis and you're talking about fairing. And one thing that I've noticed, I'm 5'9". The fairing for me with the Clockworks windshield, it was blocking 90% of the wind. I rode a 450 mile day and my neck didn't feel fatigued. My chest didn't feel fatigued. Those are things that I've ridden a Dyna to Sturgis, 1,500 miles. I've ridden a Softail with no fairing to Sturgis, 1,500 miles. And so I know what it's like to have a 500-600 mile day and have your neck and your shoulders and your back just be blown out. And so this bike definitely stopped that, and I really enjoyed it. The chassis was great. I was able to go illegal speed limits and push the bike and feel comfortable.
While we're on the fairing, I did want to point out that we did ride through some pretty crazy rain on the Arizona trip, and your hands were getting quite a bit more rain than mine were. So I think that is a testament to the fairing and wind protection. Although yours was protecting you a lot in like the helmet area, your hands were a little bit out of the protection of the fairing, and you could see the bagger fairing is quite a bit bigger than the Softail fairing. Another thing is, on the bagger, it comes with a nice radio factory, and you added yours. That's cool, it has the option. But
so that's one thing I can't stand about the ST, which I know it's fixable, but there's no like infotainment system. And I know you're on a motorcycle, you're supposed to have the open road, you know, not have a computer in front of you or a phone in front of you, and I am a big advocate on that. I do have 2 kids, we are running a business, and there is a lot of stuff going on in my life. And so sometimes when we hit the road for a couple thousand miles over the weekend, it's not saying that I need to be readily available, but you know, when I feel feel my phone vibrate in my pocket, and then I feel it vibrate again, and then I feel it vibrate for like the third time, and you start to like kind of wonder, you're like, what's going on? Where I was watching, your phone was plugged into your infotainment center. You were seeing text, maybe you weren't reading it, but you knew who was texting you. You had information, your GPS was working. Where me, which is a beautiful thing, and there may be some of you watching this that are like, dude, that's what I want. I don't want a screen in front of me. But I did lack and I did miss having some of the information that I needed readily available in front of me. I just recently installed the Harley radio. Super stoked about it. Seems loud. I haven't used it out in the real world yet. It still doesn't have a screen. And so now I'm over here figuring out, well, what handlebar mount am I gonna use? More specifically for road trips, like for when I am putting in those multi-day 500-mile days and I'm just gonna be away from my phone and I need to, let my wife be able to get a hold of me and stuff like that.
I had never really used the radio, and I was probably one of those people that are like, why would you want navigation on your bike? But it's definitely good to have. It's better to have and not need it than need it and not have it.
Luggage capacity, obviously you can tell by looking at them from the side that ST is gonna have smaller luggage capacity at 1.9 cubic feet. So just sub 2 cubic feet, which would be 1 cubic feet on one side, 1 cubic feet on the other side.
My bike came in at 2.3. Another big difference I liked about my bike was the way the lids open. On the ST, the clamshell,
That's true. It's terrible. I mean, the ST, just like you're saying, I totally kind of forgot about that, but I obviously have a bagger and I've loaded up for trips. When I packed for my first trip on this Low Rider ST, I filled the bags up and then they wouldn't close. Taking like a couple things out and seeing like what level of squish is gonna allow me to do. And so it was complicated, and then not to mention, even then when I kind of got it ready to go, like stuff was getting in the way of like the buckles that like hold it closed. Bags on here are really a bummer. And then not to mention, every time I would go to close the bags on the Low Rider ST, I'm like scratching them. Because you're squeezing your luggage in and you're like leaning up against it, holding it closed as you do the latch.
You have to wrestle them to close them.
Yeah, it is a bummer that Harley didn't go with like their same style lid that they use on their bigger chassis bagger on this Low Rider ST bagger. I'm stoked you said that, because that's one loser in my bucket of being someone that's ridden both bikes. I don't like the bags on it.
On my bike, you could load them up and then like you could press it down and it isn't an issue. I did notice one time on the ST, the back didn't latch. So you latch the front, but the back was still open a little bit and you could lose stuff. So, I mean, obviously that's user, but I really like the bags on the FLH, so much better.
The next thing on the list that we should talk about is displacement. Obviously, my dad is like the biggest, like, oh, once you're going 75 on the highway, like everyone's going 75. Now I heard Juan say a couple of times in his helmet, we would be passing a big rig, doing something where you needed to kind of have that grunt at 75 to get around something. Even watching some video footage of you like taking off next to me, it's like cruise ship to start moving. It's just like, this 117 on the lighter chassis, it rips. It's for a stock bike. I mean, granted, I'm saying stock bike, it has an air filter and a tune and a pipe on it. But for the actual engine itself to have never been opened up, it rips.
100%. I've always said there's no replacement for displacement, and I rode that bike and it is very, like, it's pissed off. It's quick for being a stock out the box, unopened motor. When I was getting my bike, I was like, well, we're cruising. I don't really care about going too fast. This isn't like a race bike or something. Definitely as I've ridden it more, there has been those cases when you guys are like passing people and I'm like dropping 2 gears and like, wait for me. You know, that's nothing that a cam or something can't fix. Again, I didn't get this bike to set land speed records. I got it to cruise and it cruises comfortably. Yes, can it use more passing power? Absolutely. But I think that's easily remedied with some bolt-on.
But yes, okay, let's talk passing power, all of that. But at the same time, if someone's just looking for a comfortable bike to hit a couple 100-mile days, but also rip canyons and be more aggressive on it, at the end of the day, this Low Rider ST, it pops wheelies easy. It is 100 pounds lighter and it is easier to throw around in the terms of wheelies, burnouts. Overall, that 117 cubic inch, 125 foot-pounds of torque on the 120-pound lighter bike. When you're passing cars, when you're ripping out of corners, when you're popping the clutch to get the front end off the ground, this bike definitely screams aggressive. When you're on it and you actually do put it to the test, it handles it. I was actually very mind blown how well this bike handled in those aggressive stages of riding. I couldn't hop on any FLH and hit a 12 o'clock wheelie out of the box.
T-Bear might.
Yeah. Like the next thing on our list we want to talk about is lean angle. Surprisingly enough, the degree is off by 0.3. They have really similar lean angles. And so at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, if you are comfortable with moving around that bigger of a bike, like you're still going to be able to dive into a corner.
I mean, that was one of the things that stood out to me when I rode the CVO. Like, I mean, we did like a little canyon ride and I was very impressed at how good it handled. You know, again, I expected it to feel sluggish or feel heavy. You know, maybe with the stock setup, maybe it does feel that way, but if you throw bars and risers on it, you could definitely get it to feel sportier than you think it feels. Like, they're pretty fun in like twisty roads, considering what they are.
All right, so we had some of our cheat sheet lists like off of Harley's website. Let's start talking about stuff without this paper. You were just saying, you know, yours has mid controls, this bike has floorboards out of the box. Here's some of the things that we didn't read off the specs and the dimensions that also we've noticed.
Yeah, so right off the bat, again, the FLH chassis comes with floorboards. You're in a more comfortable riding position, I feel like, for long distance because you're not.
You know what else too? Sorry to cut you off. Yours comes with floorboards and it comes with passenger pegs at the price you paid.
That's true.
And a passenger seat. Like, your bike's ready to throw somebody on the back.
Yeah.
I pulled out single seat, no passenger pegs. And the terrible part about that was I went on my first road trip, and one of the big things that I've been doing since I've ever been road tripping Harleys is I use the rear passenger pegs as like another footrest. So I can put my feet back just to stretch out. 400, 500 miles a day, it doesn't matter where you're putting the feet. Just moving them around on your bike gets more comfortable. So that was something that my bike also right out of the box was missing.
Floorboards, again, that's big for touring. Having your feet slightly forward, I feel like is more comfortable for long road trips, whereas like mid-control-ish is like more sporty for canyons. Yeah, and like you said, having that option, this bike came with a passenger pegs factory, not with a P54's factory, but it came with the passenger pegs.
Yep. We've talked about the big differences between the 2022 Road Glide and the 2022 Low Rider ST. I would say that if you're just gonna ride your bike, you know, 1 to 2 times a week, and you're just gonna ride maybe 100-mile days, 200-mile days, you want a little bit of wind protection, maybe hear some music, you're only riding routes that you don't need maps on, you don't need to worry so much about your phone, and you wanna just have a cool Harley, I think this Low Rider ST is kind of your go-to bike. It's really comfortable, awesome bike. I think that the Road Glide is an amazing touring bike, exactly what it's for.
Yep.
And I think overall the bike is better for touring. So if you have on your schedule longer trips, multiple 500-mile days in a row, you're gonna try to ride 1,000 miles a day, whatever your goal is, or you're gonna go on longer road trips where you're on the road for days at a time, and you're going in places that you've never been, you need the map to be working. You need to know when to turn. You need a little bit more gas also, because you don't know when the next gas stop is. That's the bike for you. I mean, wouldn't you say so? And it worked out perfect because you have a Dyna, so.
Yeah, I mean, on that point, what I've always said is like Road Glide, it's a bagger and it's really good at being a bagger. And yeah, you could still do the 100-mile days. Like, yes, it's not as good for that, but it's still pretty good at doing that.
Yep.
Whereas the ST, like if you wanted to make it as good as the bagger, what are you gonna do? Bigger fairing? It's a lot more work to get it to perform like the bagger, where like the bagger, you're only going down. You know, you could do the 100-mile days, no problem. Obviously, might not be as comfortable, but you're gonna do it at the end of the day, like pretty chill. Where, yeah, it's harder to do the jump from the ST to the bagger.
If you ever have on your calendar, even if it's once a year, twice a year, like I like to go on longer trips. I know I'm gonna cross state lines. I know I'm gonna be riding to different locations that are thousands of miles away. If that's even on your schedule once a year, it might be a better choice to get a Road Glide in your garage. But if you just know, I'm never really crossing state lines, I'm only riding 100, 200 mile a day, to Neptunes. This bike might be the one for you. And unfortunately, there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, if somebody wants, they can ride a Sportster across the United States. It doesn't matter what size bike. It really just matters, you know, your determination and putting your head down and just logging those miles, you know. And maybe it kind of depends on who you're riding with. Like, what bikes do they have? Because what are the gas stops? Are they stopping every 5 gallons, or are they stopping every 6? And you don't want to be that oddball out that is stopping on a different gas stop or causing the group of riders to stop for you. So that's the other thing too. It's nicer to ride with groups of riders that have similar bikes to you. And I don't mean that in a way of like, oh, I'm not cool, I can't hang out with that guy. He doesn't have my style bike. But when you're touring, you're burning fuel, it's nice to have a similar MPG.
You don't want to be, everyone's on a 250-mile tank and then some guy's on an 80 and you're stopping. They're in the side of the road with our MSR bottle or something trying to refill. I mean, these are the reasons why I chose my bike, and you know, people had been asking, but your reasons might be different. And yeah, you might end up with this or an FXR or a chopper, you know.
Yeah.
You said there's no right or wrong.
Thank you guys so much for watching this. I hope that it answers your questions. It helps you decide which one of these bikes you want, or maybe you already have one of these bikes and this just cemented even more why you bought that bike. Juan, what do you think?
So yeah, I'm stoked I got my Road Glide. You guys can keep having fun on your 3-gallon peanut tanks.
All right, whatever, dude. Either way, grab a bike, hit the road, make some memories, and have some fun. We'll see you guys on the next one.